We are back on the News Radio WHAM 1180 Food and Wine Show with one of the biggest names in the food industry in Rochester, New York, Mr. Howie Nielsen. What's up, Howie?
Hey, well, thank you for that introduction. Appreciate it.
This is very cool, man. Sticky Lips Barbecue is in the house right now. Howie, what year did we establish Sticky Lips?
Okay, well, Sticky Lips Barbecue has quite a history, but the first one, the original store on Culver Road, opened in 2004.
Okay, all right. And it's you from the beginning, right?
Yeah.
This was your baby.
Well, here's the story. As everybody knows, I was in the pizza business for 31 years with Chester Cab Pizza on Park Ave.
Yeah, it was the Chicago style stuff you guys had. When
that
I first moved to, I moved to Rochester in 2007, and that was my spot because I moved right into Park Ave.
Cool.
And you guys had the deep dish pies, man. That was good stuff. But I'm sorry, go on. So you did pizza for years.
Yeah, well, I grew up in Irondequoit, went to Irondequoit High School, and then after that went to Alfred Tech at Wellsville, took building construction. And everybody was, well, how did you get into the restaurant business? Well, I love the building trades, and I still do a bunch of that into my life today. But back then, my sister took me out to this place in Chicago that had that stuffed pizza. I was visiting during a college break, and I said, that's for me. That's what I'm going to bring back to Rochester. So I moved out to Chicago for a little bit. I'm a 20-year-old kid, and dove into pizza. I mean, I was eating at pizzerias twice a day. I was dumpster diving just to find out what sort of things they put in their pizza. I mean, I was obsessed with trying to bring back this pizza. So anyhow, we opened up it was a pizza station opposite Seabreeze Park, June 10th, 1982. And I was a 21-year-old kid back then. And, it was quite the life, jumping into business at a young age and being really unexperienced. My father was an engineer at Kodak. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, so we weren't really from a business family. In fact, I tell people back then, when Kodak and Xerox and those companies were big, I didn't know any entrepreneurs even on our street. Yeah. They were all Kodak dads,
Yeah, sure.
And
did you know you had an entrepreneurial gene in you right from the beginning, or did it just kind of come out through the pizza thing?
No. It started when my father gave me a snow shovel when I was about 6 years old. He said, "You see all those driveways on the street?
Yeah."
Go knock on their door, ask them if they want their driveway done, and that's what I did. I did that, and then I got the lawnmower during the summer. So I was making a little bit of cash during the summer while playing sports.
Sure, yeah. So you do eventually come back to Rochester. Mm-hmm. You do all your research in Chicago. You do the pizza, Chester Cab Pizza, which you owned just up until not too long ago, right?
Right.
When did you finally get rid of Chester Cab?
Well, 2 years ago, I realized after opening up the two Sticky Lip barbecues that life was getting a little bit fast there, and maybe it was time to divest of Chester Cab Pizza. And Des, my manager, had been with me for 14 years, and it was his time to take it over. And I'm glad he did because he brought a whole new energy to it. And probably by that time in my later years at Chester Cab, Des was running the show there. So it was just a great transition to him.
Yeah, sure. So let's go back then to, you said 02 for Sticky Lips? That's when it started?
Well, no, 2004.
Oh, 04.
Yep.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
No.
So let's go back to 03, I guess. You're doing the pizza. You're the pizza man. When do ribs enter your consciousness and you think, hey, I could do this?
Yeah. Well, my Uncle Frank always had this great recipe for our family during the summer picnics. And it was really based a little bit more on the Cornell chicken recipe, which is pretty famous. But Uncle Frank never told anybody that. And this chicken it's the fireman's, recipe. You cook it over real charcoal and you baste it about 6-7 times. And it just has a nice pepperly flavor on that chicken. So, I always thought, being in the pizza business, that someday that's where I was going to get into eventually, barbecue. And I remember the day it happened. Two guys, Eric Sainer and Mike Constantino, we met. They used to work for me at the pizzeria. And as they were getting older, then they started working out in some of the local barbecue places in town. And we met at Park Ave one day and said, we could do this. Let's do it. Let's get together. So the year before we signed our lease, every Sunday we would go over to my house and we would develop all the sauce recipes. Then from the sauces, we started working on the sides. And then we signed that lease on Culver and Atlantic. And there was 11 grueling months of renovating that property from inside and out.
What was in there before Sticky Lips?
Well, everybody kind of knew it as Carvel's Ice Cream.
Yeah.
And then Kim's Carnival Cream, shortly after there.
Yeah.
So, it was sitting vacant for a couple of years. And I said, if that location was good enough for Tom Carvel, it's going to be good enough for Sticky Lips Barbecue.
Yeah, and it is a great location, and we'll get into it in a second, but you've revamped that area, too. I mean, it was just Sticky Lips for a long time, but now you've taken over the whole place. But I still want to kind of go back to early times Sticky Lips. I think that's such a cool story that you were taking things in-house and into your own personal house, and saying, I want to get this perfect. I want to get these sides exactly right and these sauces exactly right before I even open this place up. It's such a cool story that everything was developed in Howie's kitchen.
Does it sound like a familiar story to you too?
Sure. That's why I think it's so cool, really, because it's the same. Although, gosh, I bow in your shadow. But one day maybe. But
that's what makes America so great.
Yeah.
Is, if you have an idea, we had the freedoms to do whatever we want in this country.
Yeah.
And so you're doing your thing, I'm doing my thing. And you know what? By doing what we're doing, we put people to work, we put money back in the economy.
Yeah.
And it's what makes it great.
Well, you've done something, and it might be a tough question to answer, or maybe you're going to just nail this, but you've done something that I think is very hard to do, and that is you are a household name. Sticky Lips, without a doubt, is something that every single person in Rochester, New York knows what it is, and that's just not the case. There's only a handful of places like that. I feel like Sam Fantuzzo's accomplished that with Salvatore's, obviously. They're out there, but there's also plenty of restaurants that no one's ever heard of, except for just maybe that neighborhood. How do you think, what step do you think was the most important in taking Sticky Lips from just being a little barbecue joint owned by a local guy to being something that everyone knows and loves in Rochester?
Well, look, I really wish I had the answer to that, but first of all, I got to give credit to the Dinosaur Barbecue, because before they came into town, Rochester really, truly didn't know real barbecue. And so they came in with the smoked meats, and everybody saw the success they had.
Right.
So I guess part of the thinking was, well, geez, there's a 2-hour wait down there. That means there was still more demand for it. And so that's kind of how we teamed up. We call ourselves Barbecue Pit Boys, and then, the Sticky Lips name. And the thing is, I think the name was catchy. I think barbecue, because of the lack of barbecue compared to pizzerias in this town. So that kind of helped us, stand out a little bit.
Yeah.
And, we were smart marketers, too. We spent money on radio and TV and, print advertising, and we got the name out there. We branded Sticky Lips Barbecue.
I think it just goes to show time after time. We mentioned Sam earlier, yourself. I think it shows, look at Billy Fusillo. The money you spend on advertising is such a huge deal, and it does bother me sometimes when businesses shy away from advertising, because the most successful businesses are the ones that advertise. You really got to be there and be in their consciousness, Of course, I work here, so of course I have that take,
Right,
of course I do.
Well, for the smaller businesses, like with Chester Cat Pizza, we're just a one pizza shop. It was very hard for us to afford advertising. But pizzerias are more of a neighborhood entity than they are like with a restaurant. You have people from all over Rochester that come through. So I guess it depends on the size of business, and of course, the sales that come in, and if you have extra money over, what you need to live on, then you can spend it on advertising, reinvest in your business.
Mm-hmm. Let's fast forward a little bit. Oh, I do want to ask you where the name Sticky Lips came from. How did you conceptualize that?
Well, actually the first name that I chose was Sticky Fingers, and that was from the old Rolling Stone album, right?
Yeah.
But during our research, we found out there was a small chain down south called Sticky Fingers. So we said, well, okay, let's avoid any down the road, problems. And so what else gets sticky when you're eating barbecue? Lips. So that's how Sticky Lips came. And it was funny when we were building the place, and before any signs were up on the building, and I'm down at City Hall, going through the permits and all that. They said, yeah, some lady called from the neighborhood, and she said, what is this place, Sticky Lips? What's that all about? And, we kind of laughed because, obviously she was thinking it was some sort of a gentleman's club or whatever. Yeah. But so they reassured her, no, it's going to be a restaurant, and So they put her at ease.
Now, I don't know exactly when you made the decision, but again, now I'm fast forwarding into the present because you at some point made a decision that you were going to revamp that whole corner there where you are. And maybe it was about a couple years ago, maybe around the time of Chester Cab when you dealt that, because now you've revitalized that whole place right there now is brand new. You've got the comedy club, you've got the brewing company behind you.
Yeah.
How did the idea come around, and what was that progress like?
Well, the story behind that project goes, and my wife's going to kill me, but when we finished building the Juke joint on Jefferson Road, that took me a year and a half to build. I'm very hands-on. I design everything. I get as much into it as I can. And so when I build, it's not fast. It's a slow process, and whatever money we make from our restaurants, I pour it right back in. And so we're living on the edge, I tell people. It's not a crazy lifestyle being an entrepreneur. I mean, you really need to, watch your expenses, right? So anyhow, the building on Culver and Atlantic, after I built Jefferson, 6 months after that, and you're still trying to recoup your money, your investment that you just plowed in.
Yeah.
And the building went up for sale. And I only had 3 years left on my lease over at Culver and Atlantic. So, a few years prior, I did put a purchase offer in to try to buy the building, but my landlord wasn't ready yet. So as a defensive move, I thought, well, geez, I got this very successful restaurant in Culver and Atlantic. I don't want to lose that. If somebody else buys the building, they can bump you out, when your lease is through. So bit the bullet, bought the building, and, it's a big project, and it's 33,000 square feet on the corner of Atlantic and Culver in the city. And I have a 2-acre corner. And what can I make this? What will bring people down to that area? Being in the city, we do have some disadvantages, and I think it's more perception than it is reality. We have a very safe area where we're at. The neighborhood treats us great. I put the locals to work, and so we really have a good understanding with each other. But what's going on down there is, so I got the restaurant Sticky Lips. So I got to lease out these other spaces because our landlord had just lost his business to China, and the gym had moved out. They had bought their own building, which was a great move for those guys. So I'm sitting on this big vacant building, and so trying to figure out what would work best. And so, retail, entertainment district, kind of like what can we put in there that's going to help Sticky Lips and not work against it. So, the Lost Burl Brewery came in first. That was our first tenant, and we helped build them out, their location, and they've just taken off. They're doing a great job. I think their biggest problem is keeping up with demand right now. And so we sectioned off 3 storefronts in the back, total renovation. The parking lot we tore up down to the stone, redid that, curbing, security cameras, lighting. And then the outside of the building, we did a brick veneer look to it with canopies and sidewalks. And it came out nice. A little bit of that, some of that New Orleans architectural metal look we put in there too. And so now I had 3 storefronts. So the middle storefront, I'm like, well, we got the Lost Burl Brewery back there. I'm trying to build this entertainment district that I'm going to be calling Photo City Junction. And Photo City is kind of a takeoff of Rochester's history of camera and film manufacturing.
Sure.
So that's where that tie-in kind of comes. So we're trying to brand that, Photo City Junction. And then, what can we put in there? So it wasn't like people are beating down the door to lease out the space, because I was a little bit, I wouldn't take anybody with any idea. Like there was a bottle redemption. There's been tons of churches. With my liquor license, I can't have a church right next door.
You had a high standard for who you were going to bring in.
I wanted to bring in people that are going to work together with Sticky Lips. So the brewery came in, and then now 3 months ago, we opened up Photo City Improv and Comedy Club.
Very cool.
So there goes kind of your entertainment theme.
Well, Howie, I just want to tell you, because I got to wrap it up. We're out of time. I just want to tell you that it's been a real honor being able to talk to you and just being able to know you. And I love, I don't know how to put this in fancy speak, so you got to excuse me. I'm a dumb guy. I'm just going to put it in regular guy speak. The fact that, Sticky Lips is successful and you probably could go home and just kick your feet up. And you don't. You say, no, I'm going to invest. I'm going to help make the city better. I'm going to bring more things. I just want to tell you, man, I love that so much. It makes you one of my favorite people in the city. You're not on vacation in Hawaii right now. You're building more things. And, God, that's awesome, Howie. Thank you, man, so much.
Well, let me just add here real quick. I have over 190 people on my payroll. I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
Part of Photo City Junction and what we do with Sticky Lips is we're hiring Rochesterians. We hire people, and I'm putting people to work. And that's probably the most proudest thing that I have that will ever be my accomplishments in my life. And I enjoy working with the young people. They keep me young. The corner of Culver and Atlantic, I'm putting inner city people to work. I'm producing jobs. And so that's a great thing, and it's good. But thanks a lot, Paulie.
Honestly, it's just such an honor to talk to you. I just wanted you to know that. This is Howie. He's the owner of Sticky Lips and all the other stuff you just heard him talk about. Sticky Lips on Jefferson Road and on Culver Road, 2 locations now in Rochester. Howie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Paulie.
We'll be right back.